Well, hello, everyone. This is State Representative Kate Lipper-Garabedian. Thank you so much for joining me for a Conversations with Kate. Today, I'm really thrilled to be talking with someone folks in Melrose know quite well, which is Jennifer Lemmerman, our former alderman and then city councilor. So lovely to have you with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and so we'll talk a little bit about what you've been up to since you've unfortunately left Melrose a couple years ago. We'll hear a little bit about you and your family, and then we'll turn over to talking a lot about what you're doing in your job as the Vice President for Public Policy at Project Bread, which has been an organization as a state representative who I've been so appreciative of and impressed by the work that you've done. And obviously the need for you could not be more reinforced during a pandemic. There's been some exciting investments and work that you all have led on, and I'm so thrilled to be able to share that with folks and talk a little bit about food security across Massachusetts. So maybe why don't you remind folks a little bit about your work on City Council. I was so honored to get to serve under you as our president, and then a little bit about where your family is these days.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I miss Melrose.
Yeah, we miss you too.
With everyone. So I was on the Board of Aldermen at the time and in the city of Melrose, ran in 2013 and was on it until I moved a couple of years ago. So it was just such a wonderful experience, to spend 3 terms being able to be involved in that way.
Absolutely.
In the city. That I really loved in the city where we started my family. And so just such fond memories of my time there. And then, a couple of years ago, we were, our family had grown even more and we were looking to kind of get closer to some extended family and have a little more room. And we moved to Andover. So that's where we are now. We have our 2 kids. Eleanor is now 4 3/4. She's very insistent that
I know how that goes. Yep.
And Silas turns 2 in September.
Oh, so, wow.
That's
great.
So it's flying by.
That's really great. So we absolutely miss you here too. It was always lovely to work with you on City Council. I really appreciated, bringing your perspective as a social worker into many of the topics of municipal government and just thinking about the people behind the policy. And so I know that that's, something you've taken with you now at Project Bread, which is working, across the Commonwealth to identify reliable sources of food and advocating for policies that make food more accessible so that no one goes hungry. And food security has been top of mind during the pandemic. For everyone, I have a food resource available for constituents at tinyurl.com/KLG-COVID-food. Project Bread plays a big role in that resource. But talk a little bit about Project Bread, your mission, and how you've really been leaning in during the last year and a half, almost 2 years now.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, I do get your newsletters and have seen your resource, and it really has incredible information. So thank you for getting that out there through your channels. And
absolutely.
So Project Bread, we're a statewide anti-hunger organization here in Massachusetts. So we work all the way across the state, and we address food insecurity here in sort of 2 very different but deliberate ways. The first is through our direct service. So
right.
Anyone experiencing food insecurity here in Massachusetts, whether it's in the district or anywhere across the state, can call our food source hotline, which I will put a plug in is 800-645-8333. We answer calls in 180 languages from anyone in the state with any questions that they have, and they can get information about how to enroll in any of the federal nutrition programs to get some support in accessing food. They can find out where their nearest food pantry is, where the hours are, whether they're eligible for WIC, whether anyone who feels like they need a little extra support feeding themselves or their families can give us a call there. We also have a program that works directly with schools and summer meal sites, and making sure that kids, wherever they are, have access to food and that they can get the nutrition that they need. At the same time that we focus on those direct services, we are working, which is mostly what I do, working to break down some of those barriers that cause food insecurity in our state to begin with. And the numbers, as you said, are pretty staggering, particularly during the pandemic, but honestly, it has been a crisis here and around our country for a very long time. So food insecurity here in Massachusetts doubled over the course of the pandemic, raising all the way up to almost 20%. So almost, 1 in 5 people in Massachusetts not having reliable access to their next meal. But before the pandemic, it was over 8%.
Right.
And in a state like Massachusetts, there's just no reason for that level of food insecurity. It's a solvable problem. And we're so supportive. We're so appreciative of the support that, we've received from the state legislature, and including you, and really strong partners of working together to break those barriers down so we don't see numbers like that again.
Do you have a sense of where how Massachusetts ranks or sort of among other states? I mean, is that sort of an average food insecurity amount? I mean, do you have a...
Yeah, we are certainly not the top, which is good.
Right.
But we did see some of the highest increase during the pandemic. And some of that is, happened because of the way that Massachusetts handled the pandemic. We took very strong public health measures, which, naturally had an impact economically. And so we did see a higher increase than a lot of places in this country to kind of the way that the pandemic impacted people's ability to access food.
Okay. So it's really helpful for people to sort of hear about the two arms of the work that you're doing, the direct service work with your hotline, the work that you're doing directly with schools. And I've seen how each school system within my district, there are 3 of them, have worked really hard to promote information about the school meals program during the school year. Obviously, with the federal waiver, I think it's every student can really access free meals this year. I've, as a working parent, have sometimes taken advantage of that myself. And, Harrison's been enjoying some nice opportunities at his elementary school. So you've got that. And do you want to say the direct service hotline number one more time?
Sure. It's 800-645-8333.
Okay. So we've got all of that work, tremendously important and really highlighted in the resource that I have on my website as well. And then we talk about sort of the ways in which there are policy levers. Now, first of all, there's obviously the investments that we're making in our different budget bills that Congress has, made in terms of food security support. So there's investments, and then there's also ways in which we can update our policy framework, our laws, our regulations, to make sure that we're breaking down barriers for people accessing the food benefits that are available. Because I know, and I've seen in your work, very informative information that there are people who are eligible for some of these benefits but aren't accessing, aren't applying. So there's this eligibility gap. And so we're looking for opportunities at the state level to really streamline the ways in which people could, register, apply. That's a big one that I can think of off the top, the SNAP gap, for example, or, a centralized application for a number of public benefit programs. Other things that you all are focusing on policy-wise to sort of address these issues?
Yeah, you hit on several of the most
good.
important.
All right.
So I love that. But yeah, as you said, there's the investments. So the state budget, both our food source hotline as well as our CNOP, Child Nutrition Outreach Program, which is the one that works in the schools,
yes,
have received for many years support in the state budget, which has been hugely helpful. And they and all of our work at Project Red is focused on the federal nutrition programs because they are scalable, they are federally funded, and they provide that choice to people who are experiencing food insecurity. The ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, dollars that the state legislature has been working so hard to allocate. And we thank you for your support, Representative.
Of course.
Does make an investment in making sure that people can, who maybe don't even know that they're eligible for SNAP or some of these programs, to reach them and let them know, and Project Bread, we did some extensive research around what the barriers are and some of the misconceptions and people thinking that, well, if I enroll, I'm taking it away from somebody else who might need it more than me, or language barriers, or just misinformation about what the program is. We can address all of that through these awareness campaigns. And so there's a major investment in ARPA around that.
Yeah.
You mentioned the SNAP gap, which is the term we use for those people in the state who are likely eligible for SNAP but unenrolled. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why that might be. Awareness is one way to address it. Another is a common application, which is, when anyone applies for Mass Health or any other public programs, that they're given the opportunity to use that same information to apply for other programs that they might be eligible for, including SNAP. I'll say in Melrose, there are about 1,800 people who are likely eligible, but not enrolled in SNAP. That's more than half of the people in Melrose who would be eligible for SNAP are not enrolled.
Yeah.
So that's a major resource that is not currently being utilized.
And so some of it is awareness, probably. Some of it is the bureaucracy or sort of the initial burden of just finding the time to sit down to do the application. Some of it might be stigma, or just concern about, to you, what you were saying about, do I really deserve this, or am I really the type of person who, is intended for this kind of program?
Yeah, and when you have an increase in food insecurity like we've seen over the last couple of years, you have lots of people who have never interfaced with the system before, and they just don't know how. If any of your listeners think they might be eligible and they call the food source hotline, we can walk them through 95% of the application process. And then they just kind of have to do the last part to submit it and really can get that resource out to those who most need it.
Great. One other policy that comes to mind is the bill that we just enacted around school meals, right? And universal enrollment. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So school meals is one, there is no roadmap that you can draw to ending childhood hunger in Massachusetts or anywhere else that doesn't include providing school meals to kids. It is just the most critical resource. Kids get up to 50% of their calories at school. And so we need to make sure that it's as available as possible. You mentioned that right now, federal waivers make meals available to all kids. That ends at the end of the school year. Right. And, that is a pretty major cliff for these families who have been, receiving these meals since the start of the pandemic. So there was a bill that just passed, which we're so thrilled about. It was a Project Bread priority, and lots of anti-hunger groups rally around it. Basically, what it does is it takes a look at the schools that are highest need, and it looks at the percentage of kids that are in that district that are eligible for free or reduced price meals. And if that school meets a certain threshold, they are allowed, there's a federal program called Community Eligibility Provision that allows them to provide universal school meals, every kid. And, this bill that the legislature just passed, it expands the use of that program across the state. So it says that schools who are eligible for this federally reimbursed program, need to enroll in it and need to provide universal school meals to their entire student body. It also has some provisions around it. I know, every once in a while in the news, you see stories pop up, but there are instances where kids who have a meal debt, they either can't get a hot meal or they can't participate in a sport, or there are these practices that involve kids who have a meal debt. And this law would prohibit schools from involving kids in those conversations. It's not a conversation that kids should be involved in.
Absolutely not.
So it's a huge win for making sure that kids are being fed while they're at school, and we're really thrilled for it.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations on your strong advocacy on that. I was glad to co-sponsor the bill, and I'm really glad that it's been signed into law.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your support. I will mention, if we have time, just in this vein real quick, a couple of things that are also happening in that realm of school meals. The Build Back Better bill, which is making its way through Congress right now, also strengthens the community eligibility provision. It would make it, it would lower that threshold. So it would make it so that more schools could participate in it. So it would make it more widespread here in Massachusetts. It also invests some dollars federally to make it more financially viable for schools to participate. We're hoping that the Senate moves and that provision makes it through. So that's an exciting step forward as well.
And can I ask you, Jen, just out of curiosity, do you do policy work at the federal level as well, or how does that work with Project Bread? Do you have a national partner?
Do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we do have there is a national group. It's and it works with organizations like ours across the country. And then we advocate strongly with our federal delegation. Great. And, in Massachusetts, we could not be more lucky with the federal delegation that we have. Congressman Jim McGovern is the anti-hunger champion in Congress.
Okay. Okay.
And you'll often see him on the floor of the House with his End Hunger Now mask.
Sure.
He really has made this his mission. And so it's an incredible opportunity for us as the anti-hunger advocates to have a partner on the federal level. And so we do. We do work with them as well on federal issues.
Great.
And have been advocating for Build Back Better, as through the course of this bill.
Sure. And I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were going to tell us about maybe one other. So there's that.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah. So finally, ultimately at Project Bread, our goal is to ensure that every child in Massachusetts, every student in Massachusetts can access a school meal while they're there. And so we do have legislation that we have worked with the legislature to introduce and have a coalition working to advance called the Feed Kids Coalition that would bring universal school meals to Massachusetts. End that barrier altogether. We know through our work in the schools that there are two major barriers to kids eating when they are at school. The one is cost, which everybody gets. Obviously, if a kid can't afford it, they're not going to be able to access it. The other is stigma.
Right.
And we hear over and over again about the stigma of being, a child on reduced price meals, or of having to fill out the forms for free school meals and prove need, and families cycling in and out of eligibility, and sort of all those barriers that keep kids from accessing. Here in Massachusetts, 26% of our food insecure families don't qualify for a free reduced price meal. They're above the income threshold, but they still can't afford it. And so really we just like visiting the school nurse, this is a critical piece of schooling and of helping kids be successful. And so that is our ultimate goal. And we are working on legislation for that, which I know you have co-sponsored, and we're so grateful for that. Mayor Broder has been really supportive as well of this initiative, and we're hoping to move it forward.
Great. Well, there's a lot of momentum in this space. I mean, it's unfortunate that it takes, such a tragic pandemic to sort of reinforce the mission and the work that you've been leading on long before we'd heard of COVID. But it does create, I suppose, this opportunity to rethink how we've structured our programs, where we've invested our values, the ways in which we've set up families and children to have access to healthy, accessible food. And so it's really been important for me as a little state rep who's got a small, team, to have partners like Project Bread who are deeply entrenched in this work, who have expertise in it, to think through the policy levers that we can really enact to create change that is meaningful for people. So thank you for all of that work. And also the direct service work that you're doing is so critical, because it is not only, as you said, generally for people, some of this can be challenging to decipher, but certainly during a time where many people weren't expecting to need to even look into these things until the pandemic hit. That's certainly been my experience with the unemployment system. Scores and scores of people have reached out to me who never would have thought they needed to apply. And it's, like a different language in some ways, trying to figure it all out. So
Absolutely.
Knowing that there's this resource at 800-645-8333 that you can call to learn more, to inquire about the programs, to see if you're eligible, to get through 95% of the application with somebody walking you through it. And of course, then Project Bread's website, I'm sure, is a great resource as well, including for people who maybe just want to support the mission and get involved in some of the advocacy work, to learn more there as well.
Yes, we would love anybody who's interested in getting involved in what we're doing on the advocacy side. Would love to have you. And yes, anybody who's looking to just learn more because they need the resource can go to projectbread.org.
All right. Well, great. Well, in our last remaining minute or so, any plans to enter into any Andover level, politics at some point? Melrose benefited so much from your leadership.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Maybe someday.
Okay.
Maybe someday.
Never say no.
I have to say, in Melrose, the community is so wonderful and so strong. And I do miss that. In Andover, we have loved, but we did move here with a newborn.
Sure.
And just a few months before a pandemic. And so I have not gotten to know this community quite as well. And so it does make me miss Melrose. But
that's understandable.
Maybe someday.
Any fun plans for the holiday season and the new year with two little ones?
Oh, it's just, we're staying local,
Sure.
which is wonderful, but it's just, the 4-year-old in particular the magic right now is so exciting. And so we just have been, driving around looking at Christmas lights all the time. There's a tree lighting coming up here in a little park near us, and it's just been really fun.
Oh, good. Well, that is something to hold on to. I've appreciated those moments, certainly amidst all the chaos of young kids as well. So,
Absolutely.
Well, so nice to talk to you, Jen, and great to see you. I look forward to continuing to work with you in our roles on food security. And of course, just I'm grateful to have you as someone who I can personally reach out to with questions or ideas. And so I wish you and your family a lovely holiday season and really appreciate you spending some time talking with us for Conversations with Kate.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you for all you're doing. It's been wonderful to work with you in this way.
Okay.